For this tutorial, let's talk about how to use color within your design. No single element has more effect on the mood and the purpose of your viewer than the colors that you use within your design. And so color is what gets the attention, and it really sets the tone of how you want to convey what you're doing. But what colors are right to use? Well, whenever you create a design, you're not designing it in a vacuum. You want to use whatever is available to you. And in this case, if you're given photographs, you can use those photographs as a starting point for the colors that you're going to use for the rest of your layout. Now, depending on the software that you have, most of them have a swatches panel. In this case, I like to do my picking of colors using InDesign, but later on we can export these and use them as a file for Photoshop, Illustrator, or whatever else. The first thing I want to do is I want to have a look at my swatches panel, and you can see that this comes with some default swatches. Now, these swatches may not be appropriate for what we want to use within our design. We want to be able to pick colors from the picture that we're having and then start to apply them to the text and even the background. So I'm going to ignore all of these swatches by simply deleting them away. So in my swatches panel, I'll select all of those and click the trash can, and we're simply left with the black and white. You don't have to do that, but it's a good way of just kind of clearing out the space. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to move my text off of here, and let's focus on what we can see within just this photograph. Of course, every photograph is different, but I want to kind of put to right what I'm seeing within this design. First off, I can see that there's lots of nice blues and there's lots of nice oranges, and both of those colors are complementary on our color wheel. So right off the bat, I've already got a good color scheme that I could pick and choose from. But it's more than just a solid red, orange, blue, yellow, whatever is on here. There's tints and shades to here. And I want to be able to pick up and use those subtle tones within my overall design and have those as options. In order to do this, I'm going to pull my image off to the side. Let's give us some area to work on. Going over to my tool panel, I'm going to pick my rectangle tool and I'm going to create just some simple little rectangles. Now, these rectangles don't need to have any outlines, so I'm going to remove it by setting their stroke color to none. And for now, we can just kind of keep it as a default color. I'll keep it this default blue, whatever I can see to work in. And I'm going to make a large variety of these different rectangles. I want to be able to pull on as many different color swatches that I can pick and choose from this particular image. With several of them selected, let's go over and pick up our eyedropper tool. Now in InDesign, you've got a couple of different eyedroppers. You've got a color theme tool, which we'll talk about later, and you've got your regular eyedropper tool. The best part about this tool is it's also available in the other Adobe software as well. When I look at this image, let's see if I can find some light and dark areas of the different colors that I'm seeing. The light areas would be the highlights on her skin. On the top of her nose is probably the lightest area, or down on her lips. Some of the darker areas can be in the shadows, both on her hair, on her skin, and even on her clothes. So the first thing I'll do is in my swatches panel, make sure your fill color is on the foreground. If you have your swatch on the foreground, this technique isn't going to work. But with the fill color on top, I can click anywhere within my image and pick up the colors. Let's do some on the lighter area of her skin. With it picked up, you can see the eyedropper is swapped to the left-hand side. Then I can go over to one of my swatches, and with one click, I can apply that to my swatch. To pick up a new color, hold down the Option key. You can see that swaps over, You can see that swaps over your icon to the right-hand side. This will let me pick up another color. Let's see if I can get an even lighter area down here on her nose or on top of her shoulder. Again, let go of your Option key. One click will apply it to there. And what I want to do is to pick up a variety of different light colors all over this area and apply those to the swatches that I've got. Now that I've picked out a variety of different lighter tones, let's have a look and see what I have. And you can see that some of these tones, although they're all light and have different hues, may seem very, very similar to one another. For instance, if I place this one on top of here, these two are very close to similarity, and I want to add a little more contrast to those. So if you find that you've got some lighter tones that could be made slightly lighter or different, now's a good time to go in and change them up. So I'll select this one, and to make it lighter, I'm going to open up my Fill Color swatch by double-clicking on it, and here's where I can go in and start to drag it up to a lighter tone to here. Now we want to keep this subtle. If I go too dramatic, then I'll start to pull away from my overall tones of my picture. I just want to make it slightly different enough so that I can differentiate it from my other tones. And that's looking good with that one. If I see I have any other tones, I can always test them by placing it over there. That looks pretty good. These two, so maybe I'll select this one and I'll lighten this one up too. Double click on it, so open up your color picker. You can swap over from an RGB mode to the hue and saturation mode if you're more comfortable working within this. And we'll get this less saturated and lighter for that tone. Now that I've got some light tones, let's do the same thing by picking out some darker tones. Another thing I'll point out as you see me pick up these colors is don't be afraid to zoom in on your image to get exactly the tone or the area that you want. Sometimes it's difficult to pick out a particular color simply because I'm so far away, but zooming in is the best thing to do. So let's grab our eyedropper tool. Now I'll zoom in and start picking out some darker tones for these bottom 9 swatches. With these 9 swatches selected, now I can go back and start comparing them and see if I need to make any modifications to their tones and their selections as well. For instance, I can see these two are pretty close, but they're still a different value, or maybe this one could be a little bit darker or more red or more of a hue shift for each one. The main thing is, don't be stuck with just these. And if you find that there's perhaps a color or tint or shade that you don't like, it's simple enough just to select it and delete it away. We're just exploring the different colors that we have at this point. Once these are done, I want to be able to save these up in my swatches panel so that I can start to use them within my overall design. The quickest way to do this is to select all the swatches that you have created, go over to your swatches panel, and in the top right-hand corner, click on the options and select Add Unnamed Colors. This is going to take all the swatches that we've created and that you have selected, and it will add those colors to your overall design. Now, one thing I'll point out, all the colors that we picked are in RGB color values. That's because the image that we worked on was an RGB mode photograph. If you need to swap these over to another color mode, like CMYK for printing, it's easy enough to do that by selecting all of your colors. You can then control or right-click on it and open up their swatch options. And from this options, change their color mode to CMYK. And when you say OK, it'll automatically select the appropriate color value in that mode rather than working in RGB color mode. Now comes the fun part. Let's see if we can apply these colors to our overall design. I'll back out. We'll get rid of these swatches because we don't need them. And I'm going to simply place my picture nice and in the center. Let's see what different kinds of moods and ideas that can come up with this. I'm going to grab just a simple rectangle and I'm going to put it in the back and apply some of these swatches to here. Automatically, you can see by adding this skin tone to the back of my image, it warms up the overall design, but it still complements the colors that are within the photograph that we're working in. I can then choose the subtle nuances between these warm colors, or I can go darker, and this really makes the lights pop out, or I can go cooler, and I can add those tones on top of it as well. There really is no wrong selection of color in this case because I'm using the colors in the photograph. And the truth is, you can use this with any kind of photograph, even if the colors aren't present in the design that you're working on. The last thing we can do is to start to play around with this along with our text. So let's add the picture back to the top where it was supposed to be. We'll add our text to here. And if I wanted to apply this color style to my text, I can select the text box. Do make sure the T is selected at the top. And this is where I can start to pick and choose the colors to work in. Now the main thing to remember about working with colors of text, whoops, do make sure the T is selected, is that you want to choose different values, not necessarily different colors. For instance, let me go ahead and put some color on this text here. We'll go back into preview mode. You can see the word Emmanuel really well, and then you can read the Department of Art very well, but the fall schedule is getting lost in the background. This is because the background color and the color of fall schedule is the same value. If you find it difficult to read, then you need to either lighten or darken it, the way I've done Emmanuel and Department of Art. A good test to do to determine if you can read your text based on the background color is to squint your eyes, and then once they're squinted and everything is kind of out of focus, you can see if the design disappears or the text disappears. The other thing you can do is play around with the placement of your color and see how well your text interacts with the photograph that you're working on. So I'm going to move that up, and I can again choose the type and play around with different kinds of looks and feels of this particular image. In this case, I'm definitely going to need a lighter color if I want that to show up. And let's choose the fall design, and we'll lighten that up and work within this too. I think that looks pretty good with that. Playing around with the background color, let's see what other options that we can come up with. If I didn't want it to be a neutral background, let's give it a nice dark, starker background. That looks good. Obviously I can read fall schedule, but let's change up the bottom portion to be something like this. And that looks good and works well with this. So, creating your own color swatches and using those swatches from a given photograph is the fastest and easiest way of creating unity, mood, cohesion, and also capturing the attention of your viewer. I want to see this used within your projects for this class.